Good morning, Denver. I'm asking for you to go to DenverClimateAction.Consider.It. The reason I'm asking you to do this is, and by the way, this really has to be important if y'all catching me online. Anyone who truly knows me knows that I prefer to be far into the background and, uh, and not really being, I don't talk online. I don't do this kind of thing very often. I do it if it's truly important and I know that videos right now work. And that's a way that many people are getting information rather than reading it or those kinds of things. And so I'm asking you to go to DenverClimateAction.Consider.It today, and any time after today until midnight on April 30th. And so we have 10 full days, whether you visit at 2 a.m. or 1 p.m. or 8 a.m. or 6 a.m. or 4 a.m. Any of those things will work out. You can go back and visit as many times as you'd like to. I know that there's, so again, DenverClimateAction.Consider.It. What is it? Well, it is your opinions around what's going to happen, how it happens, what priorities are, what needs and concerns are. But ultimately, it will determine, the public comment will be the final determination after an extensive process that we've been doing since November, and the development of figuring out what will our climate change, how do we move Denver to being a carbon neutral city by 2040, right? And that we've greatly reduced our carbon emissions, and that we've changed, quite honestly, behaviors of individuals, of corporations, of lots of different people who are being a part of, everybody is going to impact the environment. Everybody is impacting climate change at some kind of a level, right? And so here's my real hope. And I will say this by also saying before I get into the rest, that the possibility, the very great possibility that I could be impacted financially by saying what I'm about to say. Uh, and I'm doing that because the right thing is far more important than any monetary or financial gain that I can personally make, right, or that I can personally have. It is simply far more important to me. So this is what I'm going to say. Um, I will start it with the caveat of, that Denver, the city and county of Denver is doing, to be quite honest with everybody, is doing far better than many cities throughout the nation. I'm not saying it's doing better than any other city in the nation. I'm saying that it's doing far better. However, we all know that governments do not prioritize people of color. Corporations do not prioritize people of color. That is simply not what happens. If we look at what happened through the entire COVID situation, is that the federal government put together a $2 trillion stimulus, right? And and then $10 million for minority-owned businesses. Now, I've seen many stars and different people and different statuses of wealth trying to come up with stuff. I've seen cities and municipalities and states come up with additional dollars in some way, manner, shape, or form that have been dedicated to communities of color, but nowhere close to the range, which is what they're not talking about. They're talking about proud of $1 million, $1 million fund here or this, that, the other thing. Maybe they do it a few times, and really thinking that it's big stuff. But again, what they're not talking about is what mainstream businesses got in terms of percentages and what kind of money and dollars they got. Unless you can, of course, qualify for an SBA loan that really was open and available for anybody who could qualify. But the amount of businesses that people of color have, businesses or individuals that are in a position to be able to qualify for those things, or that have the amount of paperwork and all that kind of reporting abilities and all that kind of stuff from the $2 million SBA loans, is simply not the same. So I'm going off on a huge tangent around COVID, because COVID does not have anything to do with the Denver Climate Action Initiative. Again, please visit today and any time in between now and April 30th and participate. You will see when you get in there, you enter your email and create a password so that you can go in and out of the site as you would like to, and interact. You'll see other people's interactions. You'll see opinions. You'll see possible recommendations, and it's your opportunity to react to all of those things. And so now let me get into the real part of my message 6 minutes later. So what I desire more deeply than any other one thing is for us to get this process right. Okay. We've seen another huge process in the development of the National Western Center. When we look at data and statistics there in terms of the minority business opportunities, and the impacts of individuals inside of the communities most closely connected to the National Western Center, we see disparity there. Okay. That's a bottom line. There is not in equality that occurs, and I'm not going to get into whose fault and how and this and that and the other thing, but we know again that if our voices are not at the table very early, right, that we do not get prioritized. And so here's the deal. Here's what I'd love to see, in my true ask is for everybody who might see and or listen to this video. There's a few things that need to happen, and honestly, as a consultant on the project, I truly cannot give you my opinion, as much as it's immensely clear to me exactly what needs to happen. As many conversations as we've had, we held stakeholder advisory groups, we had meetings in a box, which are basically self-directed meetings for communities that might not be willing to participate in other ways, or to be seen publicly, because some of the fears that are there, and language barriers and all kinds of other reasons. So we did meetings in a box. There was an entire task force that has been running since February. January. There's been a tremendous amount of engagement, a tremendous amount of work. We hired some liaisons in some of the impacted communities. So I've been able to hear these basic themes, and I'm truly, just as a consultant, and someone who operates off of the highest levels of integrity that at least I know how. I can't give you my opinion, but I am asking you all to key in on a few things. I am asking you to key in on the economic opportunities which will come from this, right? As the city and county of Denver and around the state and around the country and around the world begins to move into much more renewable energies and and different ways of being. I mean, essentially, literally many millions of yards are going to need to be changed. I mean, this goes down to very granular levels. It goes into the very highest levels as terms of, some cities around the world are using machines that literally take carbon out of the air, right? And certainly we're talking about and thinking about renewable energies from solar, wind, and water and other means that are out there. All you have to do is really, you can Google, you know, climate change solutions, or different things, and you're going to get so many, like there's so much information out there, and it's been out there for a really really long time. So anyhow, long story short, I'm asking you all to key in on the economic factors and opportunities, right? I'm asking you all to key in and really think about what are going to be the jobs, and how are we going to be aligned prior to a process starting to receive many of those jobs. What about the business opportunities? There will be trillions of dollars spent over the next 10 years and 20 years in the United States around changing an infrastructure that we now know, although we've known for a long time, is destroying the earth, right? We are not in balance with the earth, and we're not using all the gifts and all the technology that we have in order to create a better balance, right? While still living as Americans, which is much, much different than how many other people live across the world. So, I mean, there's going to be tremendous business opportunities. There's going to be tremendous job opportunity. And there will also be, anyways, please give your opinion around the economics and how this process should occur. I'll say it one more time. My hope is that Denver is able to truly, truly, truly get this process right. That we are able to become the national model for how, when large scale projects are occurring, how to ensure that vulnerable and communities of color are actually at the center of the design, right? Meaning that, I can't give this opinion. So what process would work in order for this to be the most dynamic, equity driven, justice founded process that works for vulnerable communities as well as people of color, very specifically. What process would work best in order for that to actually occur? You'll see that in the site at DenverClimateAction.Consider.It. The second thing that I think is really critically important for people to key in on is really around neighborhood driven solutions. And really what I mean by that is, currently or most often and traditionally, what you'll see is large contracts come out that say, hey contractor, we need to change people's behaviors across the city or across the state or whatever else it is. Can you go and engage people and help us figure out how to do that, right? These are typically very, very large contracts, that carry a lot of dollars and all of that kind of thing, and quite honestly, quite a lot of power inside of that. I think that neighborhood-driven solutions are extremely important, because who knows people in neighborhoods better than the people who are in the neighborhoods, the people who are already doing work, the people who already have the trust, the people who already understand the culture, right? The people who have been doing the work for years. I would love to see those. I would love to see the work driven directly by those who are already trusted in particular communities. I would love to see the directive and the resources necessary for many of the behavior changes, because let's face it, we're going to have to change our behaviors as human beings and individuals. For those of us who do own homes, and those of us who are renting, we have to figure out, as a homeowner, what am I going to be responsible for? As a renter, what behaviors should be my responsibility? Which ones should be the landlords? Those kinds of things But each neighborhood is going to know itself better than anybody else possibly could. And I really would like for us to key in on the resources occurring from that level and angle. Finally, there's this balance between, there's a lot of people who say, well, oftentimes there's victim blaming going on and this and that and the other thing. Now, here's one thing that I really do recognize about the we know the responsibility that the government needs to have and take inside of all of this, right? From the city government to the state government to the federal government. I mean, there will need to be government responsibility, accountability, interventions, all of that kind of stuff. Funding, will need to come from governments, and we are very clear about that, right? And then there's I don't think that it should all be on the responsibility of individuals, right? For example, that individuals are riding bikes to work twice a week instead of driving the car. I'm not saying that's not a great idea, right? Because there's a lot of health benefits and this, that, the other thing, but I also don't want to say that every responsibility is on individuals in order to change behaviors in such a way that we're able to reach what we are trying to accomplish in terms of the carbon reduction and our impact on the environment. Excuse me. Businesses are also a part of this, right? Buildings, transportation. Excuse me. There's many folks inside of business, and especially large business, manufacturing and factories and warehouses and all of that are using a tremendous amount of energy, right? A tremendous amount. In fact, that is the majority of the energy being used, in any city, in any place. And I also know that businesses are not, let me not say this. It's not something that I know. It's something that I truly believe. The businesses are not waking up. Excuse me. Businesses are not waking up and trying to figure out, how do I screw over, people, right? Especially those that we have here in Metro Denver, or in the city and county of Denver. I mean, there are some truly responsible, that want to figure out. I think that there's a huge disconnect between how the general public understands how businesses work and what they're accountable to and who they're accountable to, and what profit margins need to look like in order to actually keep them here. You'll see cities like Detroit and things that happen there where when they were not able to profit at the same level, even though they were most likely still profiting, right? The mass exodus that occurs in terms of large businesses, and and how that can further depress a city. And so economics is a super complex kind of way of thinking, and things that need to be done inside of there. So my long story short is, I think that there is some disconnect on how people understand how businesses need to operate and profit. How many, the benefit that they provide to our communities, whether we understand it or not, right? And and the fact that many of the things that many people are thinking are certainly, there's a certain truth in it, right? And so I'm saying all of that really to say that that there should be an accountability. There should be, ways that businesses are accountable and part of this process, where they're not just passing costs to them on to consumers, right? The long term, maybe thinking about the long term. So I cannot again give you, an absolute, and things that I truly feel in my mind and my heart are true, and very specific recommendations. But I can ask you to go to DenverClimateAction.Consider.It and place your opinion there. I truly hope to hear our voices being there in the, ultimately, I think this public engagement process, since we can't meet in person, this was the best second option that we had. It will deeply inform the decisions and the recommendations that get made. And more than anything, it will be a record of what our voices were and what we asked for very intentionally inside of this process. And so, sorry that I've talked so much today. That's maybe one of the reasons I don't do videos and those kinds of things, because I'm not extremely concise. And so, but I know for a fact also that what I'm saying should not fall on deaf ears, because there's an impact. We're talking about some pretty important things here, both economically, in terms of our environment, as well as socially. So, truly hope to hear your voice in this process. We'll talk very soon. Thanks. Bye.